Welcome into the DNVR Rockies podcast, brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. Now, when you download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, you can use promo code DNVR, make your first deposit, and get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's promo code DNVR, and only at DraftKings Sportsbook. I am Patrick Lyons.
I am Suzie Hunter.
And I am Brendan Vogt, and I've done my research on this trade deadline. I have every trade the Rockies made. I didn't miss a single thing. I'm
Brendan,
ready.
I knew you were a big baseball guy, but the fact that you were able to keep track of all the deals that the Rockies made at the deadline really shows that you are willing to go above and beyond. Unfortunately, that's not what we can maybe say about the team itself in general. How's everybody's drains in their shower? Clogged with hair? My hair is falling out here in
Oh, your hair is falling out in San Francisco or San Diego. I'm quite disappointed. Quite disappointed, to say the least.
Yeah, it's tough when the sweep in the doubleheader and the 4 losses in a row don't even really feel like that's the light segment in today's show. Because what is there to say about that at this point? There's a larger picture concern. That's tough.
Also,
Rockies.
Patrick, I just can't even imagine how strange it is for you to be covering the Rockies, who are the only team who did absolutely nothing at the trade deadline. Meanwhile, you are in a city that did the most. So the juxtaposition, I can only imagine, is kind of giving you a headache, I can imagine.
Well, the Juan Soto press conference will be going on in like 50 minutes from now. And there's the one side of just being a part of something like that. That would be cool. And then there's the other spot of, as you talk about that perspective, that angle of like, okay, what does this look like from the other side? And we know the Rockies have had those moments. You know, the Nolan Arenado extension was kind of a big deal for the organization at that time. They obviously outlaid a lot of money for a superstar in Chris Bryant this past spring, being there for that. But as you said, and as you've kind of articulated very well, Suzie, is two extremes, both extremes here in MLB, and seeing a team also in its division in the NL West that does battle with the Dodgers 19 games a year, just like the Rockies, and a team that is in a small market. In fact, a smaller market. It's the only of the 4 major sports teams. They would dream of having an MLS club. That's how much of a small market San Diego is. After the game on Monday night, about 30,000 people. So that was great. But 11:30 on the streets of San Diego, silence. It's a ghost town here. It's kind of crazy how that is. So you're right. Being there for Josh Hader's little press conference and hearing him talk with all the cameras, and I imagine all those camera people might not be there typically. Monday through Sunday, we deal with that in Colorado a couple times. Opening day, maybe 4th of July, the camera folks will come down to Coors Field, shoot their pieces, but they're starting to be there a lot more frequently. As you talked with Sam Levitt, Suzie, on yesterday's show, like there's a lot of juice right now in San Diego, and it's only gotten juicier, to say the least.
Juicy. What a great word.
Crazy. And you talk about the impact of it being a rival, and it's not just the juxtaposition of the nothing and the something. It's the what do you consider sort of the philosophies, or some might say excuses, that have been thrown out there in terms of their perspective on the team. As you watch the Dodgers and the Padres load up, while I personally never, ever, ever want to advocate for a tank, it just doesn't feel right. It adds to this futility, right? When you start thinking about whatever this core is and the hope of contending sooner rather than later, compounded with the fact that it's not just that they didn't tank, they actually didn't improve either. And so you're just sort of left sitting there going, well, they sat on their hands again. And even if you could justify that approach in any given particular season, it's just too many years now where you've had to have that discussion, as a fan or media member.
And you know what? Who says we have to tank? Who says the Rockies have to absolutely tank? But you have to look at a team that's under, or 14 games under 500. Okay, like maybe we trade away some good pieces and, is that really going to make that much of it? Like, you're not going to lose that many more games. We're already so behind. It's frustrating.
I think as you started off there, Brendan, you mentioned the word excuses, and I'm someone who can't stand excuses. They're fine once, and then you learn from that lesson, and then you move on so that you don't continue to make those same mistakes and underperform, especially when there's a plan in place. But I think if you're just speaking specifically about the Rockies, it's there doesn't seem to be any real belief in their plan, partially because that plan hasn't really worked very well. And I think that's the most frustrating part of it. Again, going back to the other side of the spectrum, you say, well, the Padres are a small market club, and they're almost doing something that I'm not gonna say we've never seen, because I think the Dodgers kind of do that, where they can have 3 or more superstars at once. And for the Padres, you go, Manny Machado's a big name. Fernando Tatis is a big name. 2 guys with $300 million deals. Juan Soto said $440 million, not even enough for me. So you say, hey, NBA model of the big 3 doesn't really work, doesn't really translate to baseball. But the more of those guys that you can have, the better off you're going to be, obviously. But the Padres, being that small market club, they might not be able to sustain this very long. But that's okay. That's what a window of contention is pushing all in and saying, hey, you know what? Let's give this a shot. There was a graphic in the whirlwind of the 14 hours at the ballpark yesterday. There was a graphic Baseball America put out, something about, might have been, let's say, their 2020 farm system, like their top 30 players back in 2020. And, like 25 of the guys are out. You know what I mean? You even have recent draft pick. You even got like a guy like Robert Hassel III, who was selected 8th overall in 2020 ahead of Zach Veen. Gone. He's in Washington. And so they've got nothing now in their farm system. But does it matter how good your farm system is if your big league club is successful and is challenging to win the division, or to host a series in the wild card round as the top NL wildcard club, like the Padres are hoping to do, and having a couple more bites of the apple? Obviously, Machado and Tatis are going to be around for 7+ seasons, right? But Soto, even several more years to come, even if they don't extend him. So you're able to kind of rebuild and say, hey, if it doesn't work, we can tear down and rebuild back up again. That's how AJ Preller started this. I think when he took over, and I want to say 2014, when he acquired a bunch of guys, James Shields, Derek Norris, Craig Kimbrell, Justin Upton, I think also came over in that deal from Atlanta, and they gave up Max Fried in that deal. So I'm sure they would love to have him around. They gave up Trey Turner in a deal that brought over Will Myers. I'm sure they'd rather Trey Turner than Will Myers. Sure. But you can go back and kind of undo it and say, well, you know what? That didn't work out. These are still good assets. Let's trade them away to see if we can kind of restart things over again and again. For the Rockies, they definitely have a tendency of saying, well, we can't do this strategy over here for a reason that maybe you can understand, maybe not. We also can't do that, which you may or may not understand. You also can't do this. And so I feel like they put up a lot of barriers to say what we can't do. And so that's why we're going to do what we're doing, even though it hasn't worked, because X, Y, and Z are unavailable to them. And I don't think all of those things are true. I think we know Colorado is not a desirable place for a lot of free agents, especially pitchers. Yet they love Jose Urena and Chad Kuhl. Those guys signed as free agents. Now, if they're making up a wish list of the top 10 starting pitchers they want each and every offseason, all 10 of those guys probably do not want to come to Colorado. But what about 11? What about 12? And maybe those guys actually fit in, and maybe they actually do something. So you don't just have to build from it. Like, there are options there that are right in front of them that they've even utilized. And it's just frustrating because the plan that's in place hasn't worked. It hasn't worked.
And you can resign to that dynamic, which I guess is somewhat understandable, but if you don't make efforts to break out of it, like for a good decade there, the Padres were also a place that no one wanted to play, good weather aside, right? It just wasn't a winning organization. It wasn't where you didn't hear free agents or trades, stars looking for a trade thinking, man, let me get to San Diego. But after years of being aggressive, of trying, the fans start to come back. The culture starts to come back. Now it's a place where you're a star and you're hearing you could get moved there. You're probably excited. And it's not that easy, but that's what going for it kind of can buy you. And this is a team that hasn't won it all yet, but they've bought, I think, some goodwill and some cachet as one of the few clubs that are going for it. And we've talked about this all week, guys, that too many teams in baseball don't. And so that's the thing. I would love to sit here and laud the Rockies for saying we're not waving the white flag. We think we have a core we really like. Let's try to improve the team. But that part didn't happen either. And so it just gets frustrating. And it like you said, it gets harder to hear year after year. And Schmidt, a guy who just by human nature, you want to give a benefit of the doubt, being in charge, new guy, hoping that apple falls a little further from the tree. But it's fallen at about equidistant, right, from the last few apples we've seen. And that's tough to swallow right now.
A good metaphor right
swallow,
there.
and don't swallow apple seeds too.
I knew
not
Patrick
good.
was going to say something. I didn't know what it was, but I knew.
That's an important analogy because, the last 18 months, whatever it was, from the point in which Nolan Arenado left and the point in which they traded them and Jeff Bridich stepped aside and resigned in the middle of the season, and Bill Schmidt was given the interim tag, and the trade deadline goes by in 2021 and they don't get anything for Story or Gray or a lot of their other, expiring assets. And you say, well, but they kept Crone, so that was okay. Maybe you give them a pass. That they kept Bard and they extended him now. You can kind of give them a pass. But you look at that and you're willing to say, okay, let's give Bill Schmidt an opportunity here. And he becomes the full-time GM and gets people pretty excited. In March, people were very, very excited for baseball to come back, not because baseball was coming back, but because they had made a couple moves to put them in the right direction with those extensions. And then they signed Chris Bryant, which is obviously, somewhat questionable after already having lost Nolan Arenado, traded him away.
Aggressive.
We know it's a little bit different, right? Trevor Story. I mean, you could have given that money to him. You understand why he didn't want to stay. There's a lot more in the context, but it was strange to say the least. But they also bring in Grichuk, and they signed 3 guys to 1-year deals, something that they hadn't done really since the Super Bull pen, where they signed 3 guys like that of a caliber where you go, hey, I've at least heard of these guys. So they do that, and you have this hope, and you think maybe at the trade deadline things are going to change. And a month out, 2 was the number. They'll trade 2 guys, which is still not a lot. It's still not enough to really make a difference for the future of the franchise. But to your point, Brendan, you say, hey, maybe it moves things along. Maybe there's some progression here to hope that it's not going to be the same old. And yet here we are on August 3rd after the trade deadline, and it is the same old. And that is something that you will not get from the DNVR.com. Now only 50 cents for your first month. If you're a member, you get a member-sized beer down in the corner of Colfax, New York. One more time to open back up again. Extra raffle tickets, you name it. But Broncos season's getting started. Get all the latest. What are they going to do with Tim Patrick now out for the season? My Uber driver last night is a friend of Tim Patrick. And so she gave me a breakdown of all kinds of wonderful things about him. But we know RK and Zach and even Hank now, they're providing even more information than Uber drivers in San Diego on the Tim Patrick situation and all things Broncos over at the DNVR.com. And if you want an annual membership, you do get a free shirt from DNVR Locker. Avaca TV. Again, they've got Altitude Sports. They got AT&T Sports Nets, Nuggets, Avs, Rapids, Rockies, all in one place. Go to evaca.tv/DNVR. 0 hidden fees or contracts. Just $25 per month, plus the cost of the receiver. Use code Colorado10. You'll actually save $10 off your first 3 months on Evaca TV, evaca.tv/DNVR. You can see us there as well. So, I mean,
yes,
I think that might even be technically a freebie that comes with that, which is fantastic. Much like the Avalanche Ale. It's still their time. I know the season's over. I know it's summertime, but it's kind of now the timeless beer, right? It's a hometown craft beer of the Colorado Avalanche, Stanley Cup champs. Still can't believe it happened. We were able to raise the cup, celebrate, have a parade post-pandemic, like absolutely amazing. An Avalanche Ale. is what you got to drink for your summer barbecues to continue and extend the celebration. It's Breckenridge Brewery Avalanche Ale.
Sounds good.
I don't necessarily know where to take it next because, boy, it's was really frustrating. Like we kind of started off by saying, losing both games of a doubleheader and being in the hunt for the second game. And then just like that, it had that feeling like this isn't going to end well. It's 2-2. Hey, this one's a close game. One swing of the bat, Trent Grisham, walk-off home run. Jenny Kavanaugh pointed out, you had a 2-2 in the first inning. It's tied, and then nothing all game till the final pitch, the walk-off Trent Grisham, his third home run in 3 games. He's homered every game. The number 9 hitter, yeah, he's under 200. He's under that Mendoza line. Dude's got pop. Not bad for the Padres to win 3 in a row, both games of a doubleheader, all without Josh Bell, Brandon Drury, who they also got from the Reds, and Juan Soto, and Fernando Tatis.
And all of the guys they sent away, too. They're not around. They had, like, no one there.
Yeah. They've got Matthew Batten. He's someone. He was there.
It's hard to believe, but that in-division magic against the Dodgers and the Padres would not last all season, as it turns out. The Rockies would not miraculously find a way to beat those 2 teams every time. I feel for the guys on the field because, as we've said several times throughout this season, they've at times played competitive ball, and it's got to be a frustrating element of sort of watching the season slowly slip away. Some controllable things, some not so much. Important players going on the IL, but then look, there can be an injection of hope too. Like, not every trade deadline is sad news. Someone's leaving, the idea of, let's say they did go all in on improving somehow, and you can get a shot of life from that, as a player. But right now the conversation around the team is negative and the play on the field is sliding in the wrong direction. And it's tough because I don't think a lot of these guys have been put in a position to succeed. So it's frustrating.
Patrick, now I'm curious. You're there. What is the energy like in the Rockies clubhouse on this difficult road trip for so many reasons?
I wrote about it a little bit last night, and that's up on the DNVR.com. The vibe isn't as bad as you would think. After last night's game, a couple guys had commented that made a couple comments that, like, this was a rough day and a rough loss, right? But part of what I wrote about was asking players, like, do you feel like a tenseness in the clubhouse? Do you feel like guys maybe are a little bit tighter because they're waiting to hear their name, right? Hey, Jose, did I just get traded? Like, I think Buck Showalter called catcher Thomas Nido into his office, a day or two ago. And Thomas was like, that was it. I'm gone. Like, they traded me. They need some catching help. I guess Wilson Contreras is coming over from the Cubs. And Buck Showalter was like, no, I just want to tell you, you're doing a great job, dude. Like,
Buck Showalter should know better than to do that. He should have a better sense of the timing of things. But it's pretty funny that misunderstanding.
Yeah, but no one's tight. Like, everyone feels really good. I think they, understand. Good. Look, Bill Schmidt there are only about 2 or 3 names that I found on the 26-man roster, just a quick run through, that Bill Schmidt didn't have a hand in either drafting, signing, extending, or acquiring in a trade. That's it. Like they're all like his guys in some shape or form, or he's co-signed them in some capacity. So, like, they're his guys. And when he says, hey, nothing major is going to happen, only small moves, that's a clear indication to the guys in the clubhouse. Hey, you know what? Yeah, they're not going to do anything. Spoke with Carlos Estevez. He was with a class of guys that they won the South Atlantic League down in Asheville, and this is something true about the Rockies and being this homegrown organization. They want these class of guys to stay together and to play for each other and to have this unity. And it works a lot better if you have a successful team of guys and a successful class of players like Estevez had, with guys like David Dahl, Kyle Freeland, Dom Nunez, Pat Valleca, Jordan Patterson. I mean, Ryan McMahon, Tapia. there's a couple more even that I'm missing, but they were really successful. We're seeing that now in the lower levels of the minors that give you some hope and say, hey, all right, when they come up in 24, 25, whatever it may be, that class of guys, they're used to winning. And so they'll be able to continue going forward with that tradition. But Estevez, he said, like, we never felt like we were really any in danger of getting broken up because we were that team and there was no track record of that. Lucas Gilbreth experienced it back in 2018 when a guy in his class, Chad Spanberger, was traded in the Sungwon Oh deal at the trade deadline. And that was, pretty crazy. At the minor league level, they're not really thinking about that. But the vibe in the clubhouse is just really business as usual, for better or for worse, right? I think for the players, that's nice. But I'll sort of leave it at that. And Brendan, something you mentioned before about like hope, one of the angles too, I think that might be forgotten just a little bit. And Jake Bird spoke about this in regards to last season down in Albuquerque. There was some thought in AAA, not necessarily like, oh my God, is one of us going to get traded? Because again, the Rockies weren't really in contention. It was more about getting, players being offloaded to other clubs. But hey, if Story gets moved or John Gray gets moved or someone in the bullpen, Julius Chassin, Carlos Estevez, whoever it may be, that creates room for one of us. That's now one of the isotopes can get called up. And now maybe that, injects a little bit of life, albeit, in a small capacity. We kind of saw that a little bit in 2019, not because the Rockies had traded anybody away, but we saw some of those isotope guys, the cucarachas, that made baseball exciting, right? It injected some new life into the club that carried over a little bit to 2020 when they were successful and started off the campaign 11-3. But that's not happening either because everyone's still here. So there's still those roadblocks. So Bernie Boy Summer, unfortunately, still probably not going to happen because everyone's still on the 26-man roster.
Yeah, well, I guess I was joking, I think maybe this time last week, like, oh, heading into this homestand, I better, say goodbye to everyone just in case. And didn't need to do that.
It's tough though. Like, there's the human element of it, which, of course, these are all people with maybe families, maybe not. Am I being traded? Am I renting this house, selling this house? All of that. And then there's also they're all competitors, right? So not every trade is sad for some folk who might be willing to move to, let's face it, a team that's in a more competitive place. As you said, that can create more room for opportunity for younger guys. So I am always fascinated by kind of the juxtaposition between the bird's eye view we can do and projecting how it must feel to be a Rocky versus how these guys are actually feeling navigating this long season day to day. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about. But I would imagine that even if you're not particularly tuned into what everyone is saying and what everyone is writing, you're feeling the weight today as a Colorado Rocky of the inaction from up top. I'm sure you would have to be aware of the negative reaction to some extent.
I want to address that here because, Bill Schmidt kind of talked about that somewhat briefly. He didn't talk about getting some awesome bobbleheads from Foco.com. He probably should have. It would have been a great, plug right in the middle of the press conference. Yeah, like he would have just said, you know what, we did not offload anyone. We didn't acquire anyone, but you can acquire some amazing bobbleheads, some green panted, bobbleheads, the Rockies City Connect. They got it at Foco.com. And Brendan, we kind of like realized this in the middle of an ad read a few days ago. They sell for other teams too. So you know what? If you're getting a gift for someone that might be like a silly old St. Louis Cardinals fan, you can get a bobblehead for them and use code DNVR and get 10% off. Ship it out to them for the holidays, whatever it may be. Tap into all that Nikola Jokic MVP bobblehead. They've got all kinds of amazing stuff. They've got gear as well, merchandise for you to wear and enjoy. That's Foco.com, Foco.com. Use promo code DNVR for 10% off all non-presale items. Boy, oh boy, eating ballpark food each and every day, not ideal, but what is starting my day off the right way with Athletic Greens. Start your day off the right way with athleticgreens.com/ROC. The first three letters in Rockies, that's ROC. They've got travel packs that they're going to hook you up with 5 of them with your first purchase. I'm using mine right now on this trip. I take 1 scoop, put it in my bottle of water or my bottle of water, if I'm really going hardcore on the East Coast. And I get 75 high-quality vitamins, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, minerals, adaptogens. Before I can get down to a coffee shop, this is what I take. Gives me that clarity, helps me wake up, transitions really nicely, puts my body in that hydration mode early on. And if you live at altitude and you come down to sea level and you are feeling the effects of too much oxygen in your air,
It's not a thing.
Athletic Greens
It's
is what
not a
you'll
thing.
need. Dude, I know my body. Too much oxygen, but not too much goodness in Athletic Greens. athleticgreens.com/ROC. So, Brendan, you talked about everyone being competitors. And in talking with some of the people in the Rockies clubhouse, both this trip and, before, as well as people who just work for the organization in general, they're also competitors, right? Now, again, if you work in the front office or you work at a desk, whatever it may be, obviously you can't necessarily compete. But if your team does nothing or your team has a major misstep of some sort, that can be a little bit embarrassing and that can be frustrating for you because it's out of your hands. And so there are people that unfortunately are in different spots within the Rockies organization that are very frustrated and that they don't want to be embarrassed. They want to, when they go to a new city or when they talk to their friends, the first thing is, so your team didn't make any trades. Again, you're doing your job, whether you work for social media, whether you work in the ticket office, whatever it may be. You work hard and you love what you do, but the on-field product and what the front office does and the ownership and all of those things, that can kind of get reflected onto you. You can feel a little bit helpless and you could be a little bit frustrated, embarrassed by that, unfortunately. And that, that's the sentiment with some of the guys. One of the players, even in the clubhouse yesterday, said, like, we really did nothing. A little bit of an eye roll, and that's going to happen. We know that on a 26-man roster, even when things are going great,
Right.
not everyone's going to agree, right? But, Bill Schmidt did say in his immediate availability on Tuesday, like, hey, look, we talked with teams. We just couldn't make it work. Trades are hard to make. I counted 36 before the trade deadline. Every other team was able to find a dance partner. The Rockies were not. Last year, they were only able to find one for Michael Givens. If I had to do it again or if I had another opportunity, and I'm sure I will when we get back to Denver, Schmidt was not out in San Diego to answer our questions face-to-face. He was able to make some time on Zoom and talk to the greater media market. So there was more opportunities for folks to talk with him. But I would say, like, are you happy with how things went? It's such a simple question, right? You go, how could nobody have asked that? Because you almost know the answer, but you still almost have to ask the question. Are you proud of the fact that, nothing went down? And what do you think it says about your organization that you weren't able to make one of these deals? How do you think other teams feel about you?
Right.
I know that there might be, some diversion from that, and maybe you don't get that real answer. You still have to ask the question, but I would be curious to know the honest answer. How do you think other teams view you? Because although there were some names exchanged, it sounded like names were kind of exchanged. It never got to the point of looking at physicals or anything like that. I frankly think there are a lot of teams that don't really want to dance with the Rockies in any capacity because it may be a waste of their time to go back and forth, really start moving things along, and then find out, they weren't really that serious. I don't know that teams really think the Rockies are serious to do business the way that other teams do business. The Orioles were in a real bad predicament. They're playing really well, and yet their game plan is to not, try to make 2022 a successful campaign for them. That's going to be frustrating, but you can see the bigger picture. So they do trade away Jorge Lopez and Trey Mancini. And so you kind of can understand that. And other teams know their modus operandi and will do business with them. I just don't know that's the case as far as teams consider with the Rockies. It might be a waste of my time. So you know what? I'm going to focus my energy elsewhere. And I think there could be a real serious image problem in and around baseball with the people that matter, not the pundits, not us that speculate or cover the team, anything like that. I think there could be a real problem within the industry with how they view the Rockies.
And you know what? I liked the way The Athletic put it. The Rockies did not understand the assignment because everyone else got it, and there was just one team that didn't.
And I think you're right, Patrick. Obviously there's the Nolan Arenado trade, and you could look at that like, why not trade with the Rockies? You might be able to find a very favorable one. But that's a unique situation. The flip side of that is look at Trevor Story. How does a guy like that just walk? And so to your point, our teams around the league, just if even he can't get moved, I could spend my whole deadline trying to get, a helpful middling piece from the Rockies. But to your point, if they're just going to ultimately never pull the trigger, it's probably not the wisest use of the time. And that's the weird thing. That's, I think, kind of hard to contextualize as a fan. They are on the clock with these moves, and there's sliding pieces. And the longer you spend trying to get a deal done, potentially the less of your other moves are available to you. So your theory, I think, is certainly on the table.
And, going back to what the Padres are doing, going all in, again, there'll be a time in which they'll have to pay the piper, right? If you rob Peter to pay Paul,
sure,
you got to pay one of them back, obviously, at some point, and that'll happen. But they're going for it, and you have to respect that. And it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be exciting. And yes, there will come a time. Not probably. There will come a time in which it will suck. But that's okay, because the goal should be, right? If for anyone that is against the concept of tanking, anyone that is like, oh, you can't tank, it's against the spirit of the game, isn't it? Then I would ask them, isn't the spirit to go after it, to go all in? And so And so the Rockies are saying, hey, look, we think we have a core here that's good and can contend. Well, then call the Nationals and trade Zach Veen, trade Drew Romo, trade Ezekiel Tovar.
Right.
All three of those guys. If these are your guys that you think can contend, you'll get 3 bites of the apple with Juan Soto. You don't even have to re-sign him, or you can even trade him if it doesn't happen to work out down the road. Then go after it. You can't be middling and say, well, we've got a good core. We think we got a good core of guys in the low levels of the minors. We're going to let Trevor Story go free, and we're going to get a compensation pick that's, again, now years away from contributing. You have to go about things differently. This is how they operated in the early 2010s. And, it did work out a little bit for them in 2017 and 2018. It helped that they had 2 young superstars come to fruition in Arenado and Story. But those 2 years could have been so much better had they made some moves earlier. And we're now in that early stage for those young guys to come up. I mean, I haven't done the homework yet to write out what the lineup will look like in 2024, 2025. But you could theoretically go ahead and say, okay, you got Elharris Montero at first base, Rogers at second, Tovar at short, McMahon at third base. And in the outfield, you've got Veen, Bryant's still going to be there. Maybe it's Daza. You've got Brenton Doyle as an option, Drew Romo as your catcher. You're still going to have Senzatella, Freeland there. Gomber still has a few more years before he's a free agent. You're still a little bit light on the starting pitching for the young guys, even in the middle range of the minor league system. But you say, wow, look at all those names coming together at once.
Right.
You could help out that core in 24, 25, and 26 by doing something now, or help the core out now by saying, we don't care about 25 and 26, but you can't do both. And they do both. It's hard because, look, things aren't even as simple as that. But I think the Rockies, the way they explain how they go about their business is, look, it is simple. We can't do X, we can't do Y, we can't do Z. This is just the only thing that we can do. And it hasn't really worked terribly well. It does work once in a while. And that's what we're just kind of hoping for. Fingers crossed, things go great. And that's why fans are frustrated, because that's not a great recipe for success. Hoping for apples to fall from the tree, roll down the hill, and then you can make an apple pie. Is that a good analogy? That's the best I can do.
Sure.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
When there's a supermarket offering a sale on pre-made apple pies down the street. So I'm with you, man. It's do one or the other. And I think that's, as I sit here and I throw these things out here, I'm the furthest thing from a qualified front officeman in the MLB. But I do know that at the very least, feed the fans, feed the media a direction. And then we can all go from there. Okay, you went for it and you failed. You tried this and it. But I think Rockies fans are on year X now of like, hey, what's even plan A? Like, what does that look like? and plan A appears to be treading water. And like, think about being a Padres fan right now. The Dodgers are seemingly this invincible team. And how cool is it that that you had a very good team and your owner and your front office just said, screw it. We're you know what's actually hard to do? Be the best team in baseball from the start to the end and win it all. We'll be the team that's in the Dodgers' way. We'll be the team that makes it hard for them. And maybe we're the ones that catches them, off guard. And it's awesome. I'm sure you're right. They will pay the price for that. But I guarantee you there's not a single Padre fan right now today who's worried about that on August 3rd.
No, they are very proud of their general manager, and they're also saying, we got Juan Soto, not the Dodgers who were in play. That happened to them last year. The Padres were set to get Trey Turner back. They drafted him. They're going to get Trey Turner, Max Scherzer, and then the Dodgers swooped in and stole it right out from underneath them. Well, that didn't happen this year, and so they did it. They were able to find a way to beat the big old bad Dodgers when some people say, oh, it's impossible, so why try? And that's definitely a defeatist attitude. Nathan asked real quick, Blackman's option at the end of this year is a player option for $10 million. He will be exercising that. He'll be coming back. One last thing I want to point out too, Brendan, you talked about the juice that's going on in San Diego right now and how exciting it is and how they're selling out. Tonight's game already on Wednesday night was a sellout already ahead of time, 29,000 people there on a Monday night in San Diego. I mean, it's San Diego, so it's great, but I think it's kind of, similar vibe with Colorado. There's millions of other things that you could do. Tuesday night, 30,000. So really good turnouts. It's going to be 40,000 plus at Petco on Wednesday for what will be Juan Soto's debut. But you've got all of these things happening where the fans are rewarding the team is rewarding the fans. I pose this question to you. What have the Rockies been doing for their fans right now to make them turn out in droves, 40,000, 35,000 weeknights, weekdays? Because they're getting that, and you understand why. We all understand why. How beautiful Coors Field is, how bustling Denver can be. Even if you're not a baseball fan in general, even if you're not even necessarily a sports fan, you're going to say, I want to go to Red Rocks, check it out. Maybe not go to a concert, but I'm going to scope out the situation. Might want to go to a game at Coors Field. That's also this iconic place. So they're already getting all those fans. What's encouraging the Rockies to do business differently? Because they're already reaping the rewards that the Padres had to work incredibly hard to get. That's very much part of the frustration, I think, in and around the organization and for all the fans out there that are holding on for dear life, that are listening to us on the DNVR Rockies podcast, do what we do, and hang in there, take a deep breath, because we'll get through this. By hell or high water.
Well, that's the thing, though. I mean, Suzie, who just came on and is doing such a great job, Patrick, who is so committed to this, the fans sounding off in the comment section. We had a press conference with Josh Kroenke recently in which we got to ask him straight up, do you view professional sports teams as community assets, or do you view them as part of the business portfolio? Now, of course, he gave the right answer, but you want to see some follow through. You're right. Like, there's little incentive to ownership right now to change up the recipe because for the most part, they're getting the desired results. But it should be a sense of pride that drives you to do this. There are other ways to make money, particularly when you're already that wealthy. It's easy for me to say what someone else should do with their money, but here's my thing. If your money's going towards owning a professional sports team, then I do get a say, and Patrick gets a say, and Suzie gets a say, and so does everyone in the comments. They make this something Denverites can feel proud of. Think about how deeply ingrained the Chicago Cubs and Wrigley Field is inside of Chicago culture. Now, that's not a team that succeeded a lot, but that's something that city's proud of regardless. And the Rockies have to find a way to earn that. You have to show passion from ownership. You have to give back to the fans that have disproportionately given back to you over the last decade. So I think it's not going to happen. It doesn't seem like it. But if anything, it should be a sense of pride that drives ownership to say, hey, enough's enough. We want to be viewed differently as an organization. It's not just enough to be a nice tourist destination.
Suzie, I think you should have the last word. You are, I feel, the most neutral in a sense. I feel like I'm very neutral and biased, but look, when there's bad news to report, I'm gonna let you know how it is. I feel like you can at least put a smiley face on this, if that's
Oh gosh, that no pressure, right? I think it's really tough to spin this in a positive way. I mean, at the very least, I'm like, hey, we've got good guys. Like, they're good people on this team. So, like, it's
No doubt.
nice to see that they're being appreciated by this club. But imagine how much more we could appreciate them if we give them a chance to win.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, it's I'll never forget going to a friend's wedding, and the best man said in his speech, his first 3 words, "It is what it is." And I thought, oh, that's what it is here at this wedding. Because I wasn't an insider. I didn't have a press credential to their relationship to know. I was on the outside. I'm flipping through the newspaper, and the headline said, "Marriage. It is what it is." And that's never a good thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. But for the Rockies right now, I think you have to say it could be worse. It is what it is. And we'll leave it at that.
I guess we'll leave it at that.
Yes. And the last thing is, and we'll leave it at that. Also, again, sometimes being neutral can be negative, right? I think we know that.
Yeah.
Hey, we are begging for a scrap, just a morsel of celebration. We'll do it. Just throw it our way. Give us something.
Bud Black got ejected. I got to see that. That was great.
Yes. You got an ejection.
I'm gonna give you
I got
like
an
a
ejection.
30-second nutshell. Yeah, I'm gonna give you like a 30-second nutshell. Vin Scully passed away. That was awful. Did learn that Ryan McMahon still to this day goes back and watches some of his early home runs of Vin Scully, and even mentioning it now, I'm getting goosebumps again when he told me last night on that. So many other little things. There's snipers on top of Petco Park, apparently. That's a thing. Learned about that. Blake Snell and Joe Musgrove are like on first name basis with one of the security dogs at Petco Park and goes around and pets them. There's a brick engraved that says boycott Petco, but it doesn't say that. It's like a bunch of words, right? It's like a acronym that like it's a bunch of words like best off you know what I mean?
Got
So
it.
it's boycott Petco because they do some things at some times like a big corporation. There are a lot of things going on here in San Diego. Maybe we'll have to talk more tomorrow. What do you think? Do you want to do this again on post game? And you have to say yes. So what do you think? You want to do this again post game tomorrow on Thursday?
Absolutely.
I would love to. Yeah, there's no shortage of things to talk about when it comes to the Rockies. But yeah, that'll be the last day of your trip, right?
That's it.
No.
Home sweet home after that. And yeah, we'll continue the conversation, of course, on Twitter at DNVR_Rockies. At Patrick D. Lyons is where I'm at on Twitter.
I am at the Suzie Hunter on all platforms.
I'm at Brendan Vogt on Twitter.
And you know what they say about momentum? Oh boy, we've got it. And it's only as good as your next show. But the show's going to be really good. The show is going to be good. So maybe we do have momentum. I think we do. Thank you.